Okay, a very warm welcome to all of you, and especially to our two presentators today. Before we start, just some very brief housekeeping. As mentioned earlier, the presentation and discussion part of this event will be recording, but I will start the recording for the question and answers part of the event. If you have any question, you can also raise obviously your digital hand, but I will monitor as well the chat if you prefer posting your question on it, for instance, because you're in a place where you cannot talk. Since this is the very first events that we are organizing as part of this new European Parliament History Network, I'll just say a few introductory words about the network itself. It's Wolfram Kaiser, who is also among the audience today online. He was the one who took the initiative to establish such a network. Originally, the network was to be hosted by the European Parliament Research Service at the European Parliament, or as part of the structure of the EPRS. Now we are developing it as an academic initiative. So network members are mostly academics, historians, but we're also very keen to include other colleagues from other disciplines as well. And the rationale behind forming the network is also to foster dialogue and cooperation among researchers, but as well as practitioners in the EP and beyond. We are 5 co-coordinators, Wolfram Kaiser, Adriana Ripoll-Servan, Gilles Pittos, Umberto Tulli, and myself, and we're responsible for maintaining the network alive, organizing the event, although we're also very open to ideas for events and also people who want to become involved. We circulate and publish newsletter roughly in a quarterly fashion, and the newsletter contain information about relevant new publications or conferences, as well as call for papers. And we also organize online events such as the one that we are having today on topics that are connected to the European Parliament. Again, we also plan to have different formats, and today's discussion is only one of these formats. We also have a brand new website that you can also check for newsletters and updates on events. I will also post the link later on on the chat if you are interested in looking it up. And obviously, if you miss an event, the recording will also be available on this website via a link to a dedicated YouTube channel. And obviously, we're also very open towards cooperation with former and or current MEPs or official, as well as HIST, which is the new division within the EPRS that is tasked with looking at the EP in a more historical fashion. So it's basically the new history service inside the European Parliament. So in that sense, it's completely different from the EPHN network. Today, I am very pleased and actually delighted to have 2 very eminent specialists of EMU to present and discuss Ivo Maes' study, which is entitled The European Parliament Economic and Monetary Union and the Maastricht Treaty. The study was published in the spring, so in April 2025, and published by the European Parliamentary Research Service. The author of this study, Ivo Maes, hardly needs much presentation. He's a professor and Robert Treffin Chair at KU Leuven, and he was also a senior advisor at the Economics and Research Department at the National Bank of Belgium. He has researched and published extensively on European monetary integration and the history of central banking, and one of his latest publication, a monograph entitled Robert Triffin, A Life, which was published by Oxford University Press in 2021, has been awarded the Best Book Award of the Italian and European Societies for the history of economic thoughts. I'm also very pleased to have Alexis Drach joining us as a discussant. Alexis is a lecturer in modern history at Paris 8 University. He holds a PhD from the European University Institute in Florence and has been a postdoctoral fellow at Glasgow University as well as at the EY. His first monograph has been published by the Presse Universitaire de Rennes in 2022 and is entitled Liberté surveillée, supervision bancaire et globalisation financière au Comité de Bâle, 1974-1988. And as the title indicates, it takes the case of the Basel Committee to explore the development of international banking. Thank you very much to the two of you for agreeing to joining us today. And without further ado, I will leave the floor to Ivo.
Okay, many thanks. If I can start with a practical issue, I just received a message from Anthony Teasdale that that the link did not work. So I forwarded him again the link, but yeah, I don't see that he has joined. So if somebody else maybe could also send him again the link yeah. Sorry for this technical issue. So many thanks. So it was a great pleasure to work on this study, and I thank very much Wolfram for asking me for it. And so now I would like to share the screen. So oh no. I think I'm sharing the wrong screen.
We can see you're a busy man, but unfortunately not the presentation.
It's not good to have these type of messages just when you have to do technical things. Is this better? Is this the screen of the PowerPoint?
Yeah, that works. Thanks.
That works. Okay. So many thanks again for the invitation. So there, the study on the European Parliament, EMU, and the Maastricht Treaty. And well, there are three parts to the study. Firstly, from the Rome treaties to the Delors report. Secondly, the Intergovernmental Conference on Economic and Monetary Union and the Maastricht Treaty. And thirdly, going into European Parliament strategies for promoting economic and monetary union. And so the first part, well, it's a very long part. And there, let's say the Maastricht Treaty, it was the end game of a very, very long game. And let's say the Parliament played already an important role with the 1962 report, the Van Kampen report. And so there was no alternative than to go back to the Rome treaties, because the Van Kampen report is based on the Rome treaties. So there you have to go to the Rome treaties And then in this first part, the Van Kampen report, the Werner report, 1979 relaunching of the European project with European monetary system and direct elections for the European Parliament, the 1984 Spinelli draft treaty, the Intergroup European Currency, Single European Act, and the Delors report. So it's a very long prehistory, but a very important one, because the argument will be that the key point of the paper is, well, the European Parliament has been one of the agenda setters in the EMU debate, and agenda setter, well, they put it on the agenda really from the beginning, 1962 Van Kampen report. So, in first instance, we have to get to the Rome treaties. Rome treaties, useful negotiations between Germany and France. Germany, foreign policy motives, binding Germany into Europe, and concerned for the economic order. France, money, a sectoral approach, and much more reluctance, both political and economic. And so we get to the treaty, the Rome treaties. For us, important is the European Economic Community. It's basically the creation of a common market. The four freedoms are central. There are accompanying policies, common agricultural policy, competition. The monetary dimension, it's limited. Limited monetary dimension, it's focused on the balance of payments. Robert Triffin, he said it's a Hamlet without a real role for the Prince of Denmark. And so that's the basis. And so the European Parliament, it's taking up very quickly the monetary dossier. Of importance is the 1962 Van Kampen report. And the Van Kampen report by Horst Ungerer, a former official of the Bundesbank, International Fund, he said this was the first official report where monetary policy coordination, EMU, was put on the agenda. So it's the European Parliament which brings EMU on the agenda. And so what is the basic point is, look, with creating a customs union, common market, one is creating more economic interdependencies. More economic interdependencies, you need more policy coordination, economic policy, and also coordination of monetary policy. And so the report proposes the cooperation of the central banks in a common mechanism. A common mechanism inspired by federal central banking systems like the US. So this is a very strong position, proposing something which goes in the direction of a US Federal Reserve System. A further element which is very strong in favor of a monetary union is transfer of part of the international reserves of the central banks to this institution. And this was one of the key ideas which Triffin was defending around these times. But so, a very important transfer of international reserves, something which the central banks did not like. Then, another element of the report, the executive board of this common institution should be independent and contribute to maintain monetary discipline and price stability. And there you really see the German or the liberal ideas coming to the fore. Next element is there should be close cooperation with the competent authorities for economic policy. So the common mechanism should cooperate with economic policy authorities, but as the report notes, this could be tricky, as there should be cooperation, but the mechanism should also be independent. Further element is there would be a common unit of account for the transactions. And then the report notes that the common monetary policy should be the final outcome of the coordination of monetary policies, and a common monetary policy is an indispensable condition for the economic and political unity of Europe. So very much the monetarist, very much this federalist vision, but on the other hand, you have the more traditional vision. The EEC should not separate itself from the free world and avoid any form of monetary protectionism. And so clearly saying, look, we should be Atlantic, and this means that international, that the monetary affairs are part of Bretton Woods, the Bretton Woods system. So the report is a compromise, as is normal of reports in the parliament, but still quite in favor of a monetary union. Now, the 60s, not much happens. When does EMU come on the agenda? It's the Hague Summit, 1969, when EMU becomes an official objective of the community. The Hague Summit then decides we should have a committee of experts which would work out what is EMU, how can we get there. A group of experts is formed. The group is chaired by Pierre Werner, the Luxembourg Prime Minister and Finance Minister. And in its definition of the final objective of EMU, it comes out in favor of a very important transfer. It's very supranational. The cohesion of EMU, it requires 2 new supranational community institutions, a center of decision-making for economic policy, a community system of central banks. So 2 new supranational community institutions. This is more ambitious than what we have now, where with the Maastricht Treaty and now we have the community system of central banks, but we still do not have a center of decision-making for economic policy. The Werner report also goes into, well, what does this imply? As this is a real transfer of sovereignty to the European level, and so says the Werner report, there should be a corresponding transfer of parliamentary responsibility from the national to the community level. And it further says, well, this would imply also changes in the way the parliament is elected, so calling for direct elections for the European Parliament, but there the report does not further elaborate. And the Werner report, it was very much discussed in the European Parliament. European Parliament came out very much in favor of the Werner report. Now, the Werner report, it was not very successful. So the 1970s were a period of monetary disorder. And then things will change in 1979. 1979, another key date in the history of European integration, with direct elections for the European Parliament and the creation of the European monetary system. Now, the European monetary system, it's a much less ambitious objective than EMU. It's attaining a zone of internal and external stability, framework for policy coordination. There was foreseen a second institutional phase with European Monetary Fund, but it was not done. What is absent in the EMS is financial integration. And initially, the European Parliament was not really enthusiastic. It found it all too intergovernmental. Later, when the European monetary system was a success, the Parliament would also become more enthusiastic. Now we have then the new newly elected European Parliament, and one of the important members of the Parliament is Altiero Spinelli, and you have the Spinelli draft treaty, which was approved by the European Parliament in 1984. And in my reading of this draft treaty, I was very much surprised how much the Spinelli draft treaty was in favor of a supranational monetary union. And so it says the European monetary system, it was the first achievement of the democratic unification of Europe, together with the European communities and European political cooperation. Among the organs of the community, there should be a European monetary fund, which would have the autonomy required to guarantee monetary stability. And here you can already see this is different from the Van Kampen report, which said that the new system should be independent. And here the parliament is in favor of autonomy. And this is one of the discussions which will come back, autonomy or independence for the European Central Bank. Another element in the Spinelli draft treaty is a concurrent competence for the Union with respect to European monetary and credit policies. Also creation of a European Capital Market Committee, as well as European Bank Supervisory Committee. And also, as it lists as a concurrent competence of the Union, the progressive achievement of full monetary union. It remains vague on central bank independence and further progressive conversion of the ECU to becoming a reserve currency and a means of payment. So this is very ambitious, goes much further than the European monetary system. And these proposals go also much further than what later would be foreseen in the European Single Act. Then we get to the second parliament, which started in 1984, and there still European monetary union, it remains on the agenda, and especially there is an intergroup European currency, and it was started in 1984 by Otmar Franz, and there were more than, it organized in the period between 84-89, more than 50 meetings, 5 international monetary conferences, high-level participation, a lot of members of the parliament, but also most of the central bank governors came there. And so you see how this intergroup, how the parliament was working with the central bankers, mostly European, but also Norwegian. There was the Japanese vice minister for finance. So a lot of people, academics, Robert Triffin, politicians, Pierre Werner, so really pushing the European currency. And what were the themes which they discussed? Well, firstly, the functioning and the significance of the European monetary system. Secondly, the role of the ECU, and there the role of the ECU, which was the currency unit of the European monetary system, but not much used there, but which was used more and more on the financial markets. So this was there, the role of the ECU. And then also the conditions necessary for the creation of a European currency, as well as the path towards it. So this intergroup European currency playing an important role in the period 84-89. Now we get to changes. In the sense 1985, you have the Delors Commission, Single Market Project, and Single Market Project, Single European Act. And so what does it bring? Well, it brings the acquis communautaire in monetary matters into the treaty, EMU as an aim of the community, EMS and ECU, and it sets in motion a type of engrenage from one market, one money, and a crucial role thereby was the Schioppa report of 1987, efficiency, stability, equity. A single market was inconsistent with the combination of exchange rate stability and national autonomy of monetary policy. And so you have the engrenage working, European monetary system with stable exchange rates, preparing the way for EMU. This becomes an official project. The law report, April 89, monetary union, price stability as an objective of monetary policy, independent central bank, economic union, binding rules for national budgetary policies, abolishment of monetary financing. So this is the prehistory, and what can really see is how the parliament has this agenda setting role for the EMU dossier. Now we get to the Intergovernmental Conference, and there are three topics: preparing the Intergovernmental Conference, the Herman Report, secondly, the Maastricht Treaty itself, and then the adoption of the Maastricht Treaty in the European Parliament. So to prepare the Intergovernmental Conference, the Parliament had a committee, Herman Report, interim report of April 99. And what was the key elements of the Herman Report? Well, one needed more coordination and convergence of economic policy, and the aim is promote social and economic cohesion. And there you have the law report, which is then accepted also by heads of state and government, which is very much focused on the monetary side and leaving economic policy to the member states. There the parliament is saying, no, we need more coordination of economic and social policies. And then the law report says we need an independent central bank. The parliament is in favor of a European central banking system that decides autonomously how to implement the monetary policy agreed by the Council and approved by the European Parliament, by ensuring price stability and supporting the objectives of general economic policy formulated by the Council and the European Parliament. As you really see different views on central bank regarding independence and what is the primary objective of monetary policy between the law report and the European Parliament. Now, also in the Parliament there are differences of opinion, and so in the debate in the Parliament on the Herman report in May 1990, you see very clearly these differences in position of the different parties. Herman opens the debate and he says, what is the main element of the Parliament's position? It's we have to go as quickly as possible with monetary union because you have the costs and the benefits come when you have the monetary union. The socialists say, they emphasize that the Parliament's report deviated on three important points from the law report: nature of economic and monetary union, aims of monetary policy and central bank independence. And Metternich also remarked, well, Herman, during the discussions in the committee, at one moment even abstained. Boehmer for the EPP, he also goes into, well, further consultation was needed on three issues: the relationship between monetary and economic policy, the mandate of the European Central Bank, and budgetary discipline. And he noted, well, also the socialists made concessions. And so then you really see how socialists and EPP, where Christian Democrats were rather close with differences of opinion, but then different opinions are the Liberal Party, very much emphasizing de Donnea, speaking for the European liberals, it would be unacceptable for budgetary policy pursued by one state to compromise monetary stability for the community, so very strict discipline of budgetary policy, and also asking for a consensus with all 12 countries of the European community, so also the United Kingdom. Then you have two big fractions which are against the Herman report and monetary union, the Greens, the Greens noted that EMU would merely lend further momentum to the establishment of a Europe designed purely for commerce, which is manifestly the priority objective in the Herman report. And so you really see how that at that time the Greens were still very much an anti-establishment party. Also, the Gaullists were not in favor. The time is not ripe to attempt it, monetary union. It would be a mistake. We get to the Maastricht Treaty. The Maastricht Treaty, which very much compared to the Temple. European Parliament did not like that structure at all. European Parliament was much more happy with EMU, which very much followed the lines of the Delors report, single monetary policy, price stability, independent central bank, other instruments of economic policy, national responsibility, with some surveillance and some clauses. The path to EMU was specified. And so the parliament officially did not have to vote on EMU, but the Belgian and the Italian parliament had said, look, we only agree with the Maastricht Treaty if European Parliament adopts it. And so you have the debate in the parliament with more or less on the same lines as the debate on the Herman report. And so who is voting in favor? A very large majority, 226. The EPP, the Socialists, the Liberals, and United Left. United Left is most surprising, and there you really see the influence of Spinelli, and some of the members remarked, we vote in favor even if we are in opposition in our country. Against, the Greens and the right. And then you had 31 abstentions, European Radical Alliance, very much what would be the Meloni group at the moment in the parliament. So then let's go to the third part of the study. What were the strategies of the European Parliament for promoting EMU? Entrepreneurial leadership. And we have seen this very clearly. The leadership of the Parliament putting EMU continuously on the agenda from the Van Kampen report, the Spinelli draft treaty, the Herman report, always putting EMU on the agenda. Secondly, interinstitutional strategies. Interinstitutional strategies, let's say, an intergovernmental conference, well, it's an intergovernmental conference, it's between the member states, and the parliament was not happy. The parliament has been maneuvering to get a foot in the door. It succeeded in having preparatory interinstitutional meetings, but let's say how important these were, I'm a bit skeptical. Third element of European Parliament strategy, cooperating with other actors. And there, one of the elements to say is, look, we talk here about different institutions, council, parliament, commission, but people in their careers, well, they are in the different institutions. Delors, he was in the European Parliament from 79 to 81. Many Belgian prime ministers, Tindemans, Martens, Verhofstadt, De Hane, after they left Belgian politics, they went into the parliament. So there is much more osmose. These lines are not always so clear-cut. And there are a lot of networks which are important. And of very much of importance are the political parties. The political parties at the European level. And very, very important are the summits of the political parties before the European summits. And at the time of the Maastricht Treaty, the biggest political party were the Christian Democrats. They were in power in Germany with Helmut Kohl, Italy Andreotti, Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands. So they were the key players. Kohl, the three countries which had the presidencies, and so these summits were very important. And in these summits, also the fraction leader of the European Parliament would participate. And so these were very important moments for the Parliament to have an influence on the Intergovernmental Conference. Fourth element, working with the media. Working with the media, members of Parliament knew very well the media. Fernand Herman, he was very much with the Francophone Belgian press. To my idea, the person who understood best the importance of European Parliament for the media was Jacques Delors. And he was a former MEP, former chair of the Econ Committee, and he started with a de facto investiture debate, and he would do his important announcements in the European Parliament, as it was a way to communicate not only with the Parliament, but to the larger European society. Conclusion. During the period here considered from Rome treaties to the Maastricht Treaty, it is a period that European Parliament, it evolved from what's called the Cinderella institution to an influential voice in the EU's policy process. And we also did this for we showed this for the EMU dossier. And so the agenda setting role of the Parliament, Van Kampen report, Spinelli draft treaty, intergroup European currency, Herman report, so very important. In terms of contents, what was the emphasis of the European Parliament? A more democratic EMU, an autonomous central bank, orientation by the European Council and European Parliament, attention to the prudential supervision of banks, and this is very different from what came out in the Maastricht Treaty, and a strong economic pillar, social and regional cohesion. Now, many of these elements the Parliament did not get through because, well, they went against the limits on the transfer of sovereignty which the governments had decided, prudential supervision of banks, the strong economic pillar. So some of them, let's say, one of the elements why the debt crisis was so important was this absence of a strong economic pillar in the Maastricht Treaty. And since the debt crisis, one has been taking measures to have a stronger economic pillar, a banking union. One element also, as in the study, it's also on the Zeitenwende of 1989, and we started the study with the Rome Treaty when let's say there is a saying that Stalin was one of the fathers of the European Economic Community, as it was the Cold War which incited European countries to come together. The Zeitenwende of 1989 with let's say the big changes in Central and Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. And so one of the big discussions was also, should we have deepening or enlargement? And the Maastricht Treaty, it's a quite important case of deepening, having EMU before enlargement, as negotiators were very well aware, if we enlarge first, getting a consensus on EMU will really become very difficult. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivo. Just before we move on to Alexis' discussion, just wanted to apologize. Apparently, there's been some difficulties with the Zoom link, which had been replaced in one of the message was the link to the study by Ivo. So I've been sending the new link to some of the participants who join us lately. So I'm very sorry for that. We'll do better next time. Thank you so much, Ivo, for this very interesting study and also the presentation that also very well summarized some of the main findings. And see, for me, two of the main interesting takeaways is which for us who have worked on the European Parliament shouldn't be that surprising, perhaps, is also the attempt by the European Parliament to use economic and monetary integration as a policy area in which also to profile itself and push for more competences by demanding, among others, for more democracy, which is also one way for the European Parliament to kind of ensure that any kind of new institutions that would be created as a result would also be accountable to the European Parliament. So again, we see the EP's activism towards enlarging its powers and competences. And the second point, I think, and again, which is probably not that surprising, is the prominent role played by a few of the political parties and political groups within the European Parliament. First and foremost, the Christian Democrats and obviously the EPP MEPs, but obviously also other political groups such as the Socialists, who were also very much supportive of the efforts towards EMU. So these were for me two of the many takeaways from your study, and perhaps these are also points that Alexis will pick up in his comments. So Alexis, I'll hand you the mic.
Thank you very much, Karin. Thank you, Karin, also, and the organizers for organizing this very interesting presentation and for inviting me. Thank you, Ivo, for this text. Very interesting. I really enjoyed it, reading it. I think it's I come from financial history, and I think I agree with the starting point of the paper that the literature which has covered EMU history has been mostly focusing on usually high-profile actors, heads of governments, and the like. And even if there are a few scholars trying to show that there have been others interesting actors to look at, there's still quite a lot of work to do, and not much has been done on the European Parliament. So I think it's very welcome addition to the literature, and also to the in terms of archival resources and in terms of sources in general. I really enjoyed that you made new interviews that they were like and how you looked at archives coming from the European Parliament, for instance, and so on. So I think it provided like a history from the of EMU seen from a slightly different perspective than the traditional one. So I really liked it. I particularly enjoyed the few highlights on a specific reports or groups that were that you covered, that you just covered, like the Van Kampen report of 62, the Spinelli draft treaty of 84, and then the work of this intergroup on the European currency in the second half of the 1980s. So what I liked is that it gives us somehow a more down-to-earth perspective on the history of EMU, which can be at times quite institutional. And so I think it's I think it provides some it's also some good flesh and bones story, and not on I mean, of course there is like the law and a few big players like always, but there are a few others which is quite interesting, I found. And I also, I mean, trying to somehow covering like continuing what Karin just mentioned, it seemed to me, I mean, I'm not a specialist of the European Parliament, but that what came out of this paper was that also that there is this impression that the EMU sometimes reinforced the European Parliament, and the European Parliament tried to push for, was it pushing for EMU or pushing for itself? So that's something that came up while reading your paper. And also another point is that, which I liked, obviously, particularly because I work on financial history. So the fact that you mentioned important elements such as the EQ market or the question of banking supervision, I think was really good. And also like a few, like it's more like a minor points, but the reference to I think on page 32 or 33 on the question of mobility of actors moving from the European Parliament to other areas of or institutions of European or of the national political or economic affairs, trending of like this kind of complex ecosystem and trying to trace the actors from one area to the other. I think it's also like an important thing to take into consideration. There are things which, when reading the paper, I would have maybe liked to know more about. One was the question of the disagreements between, within the European Parliament, which you mentioned very much for when it comes to the Maastricht Treaty itself. There you covered very much which political parties stand for what exactly, and it was. I was also quite. I don't know, surprised. I didn't look at this before of the Greens party opposition to EMU. But so I think it would have been interesting also to look at this kind of debates a bit before, even though maybe the debates were less heated because the stakes maybe were less high because it was not yet as developed. But in the 1960s or 1970s, like which kind of disagreement were there? So that's something that would be curious to know if there is if there are sources on the question which can help us to know more about that. One thing which I also found like opening some kind of avenue for research was the question of the relationship between the European Parliament and national parliaments on the question of EMU. And how ideas or official positions were negotiated or not, or was it like more how much improvisation, how much negotiation was it from the national level to the European level between these members and coming from national parties, and also to go a little bit further down this idea. It seems to me that it could be interesting to know a little bit more on how the various stance of each parties within the European Parliament was actually formed. How did they discuss? How did they eventually came to the official position on EMU? Was it something which was discussed or was easily agreed upon? How did they create some kind of consensus within each of these European parties? And a question I was also wondering when it's coming back a little bit to the first point I mentioned and following what Karine just said, was that how much in the support of EMU for it seems that there was some support from the supporters of EMU. There was some support of the European Parliament. From the supporters of the European Parliament, it seems that have been some support of strong support of EMU. So how much was it strategic also to reinforce each other's position, and how much? Of course, I'm sure that there were like some real conviction, but what was the political game behind it, and did like the law and others that you actually answered the question partly. How much did they use the Parliament also as an ally to push for the EMU agenda? A little bit, as I know from my own research that sometimes the Commission could use also private companies to support agendas that they wanted to move forward, or they were looking for supporters. So that's something that I was wondering. Maybe one thing I was wondering. The question of the 92 referendum, I mean, the referendum of the Maastricht Treaty in France and Denmark, how much, I mean, was it, did you, I don't know, have you found something in your research on this? Or was it something that wasn't discussed massively or not regarding EMU, still it's focusing on EMU only? So that's something that I was also wondering. And maybe two last questions I had in mind was about first, in your research to prepare for this paper, did you come across any insight or any example of some kind of lobbying activities from private companies? Because I've seen when looking at European banks and European affairs on banking regulation in particular, but I was not looking exactly at EMU, so I don't know. I see that some banks, in particular British banks, actually lobbied a member of European Parliament. So I can see this a little bit from the side of companies. So I was wondering if this appears also on the side of the European Parliament. And the last question was about so maybe it's irrelevant, I don't know, but the Segre report of 1966. What's about European, the development of a European capital market? So it's not strictly speaking about EMU, but of course it was partly related. So I was wondering if the European Parliament discussed it at all, or did it go like not really noticed? Yeah, I know that you mentioned also that in the 60s not much happened, so maybe they didn't really talk about that, but that's something that came out while reading your paper, which I really liked. So once again, thank you very much. I think I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Very extensive comments and food for thoughts. Ivo, just to ensure that we also have time for questions, perhaps, because Alexis raised a large number of different questions, all of which are very legitimate and fascinating in their own way. But just maybe, can I ask you perhaps to pick two of the most prominent, or at least the question that seems to you the most relevant, and then we will move on. Then I will stop the recording and we can move on to the question and answer, so that we also have at least 20-25 minutes for the Q&As.
Let's say many thanks, Alexis, for the questions, and let's say my main reply is more that with all your questions, I know I had a paper of 22,000 words, and I had to shorten it, and you are demanding for a lot of extensions. Let's say that the structure of the paper was the idea was to have a project on what happened with the Maastricht Treaty. And so the focus, which was the original demand of the Parliament, was to focus on the Intergovernmental Conference. And that explains the structure of my paper. And I already had a long discussion. As I said, no, for me, the Parliament is an agenda setter. You have to go back in history. Because if you want to make the argument of agenda setter, you must show it's consistent in its demand, and it was one of the first ones. So there, and but it means I could not elaborate everything in detail. And so let me say I can come back when we are off record.
Sure. I know that. I'm sure that there were But that's where more like open questions.
Yeah, that was let's say that's my main reply on, well, as a general reply, the structure of the work which was demanded. That